Hi guys, Devin here for my week 2 check-in. This week we're looking at the same graph as we saw last week. So as a quick refresher, this is a graph of student data. What we're looking at is the center node as myself, the classes that I'm enrolled in being light blue nodes, and then dark blue nodes being cohorts, and other nodes meaning a couple different things. Last week you saw that you could drag nodes around and you could lock nodes. So when you started dragging a node, it would become locked, and so we can pull these nodes apart and lock them and see kind of cool relationships manifest. So I'll kind of pull all the classes out to the edges, and what's cool about when I do that is then we can start to see cohorts of co-enrolled students in the middle. So getting super exciting about the type of data that we can look at. So these are kind of key students that are similar to each other. And in Varsity, we use these to establish similarity profiles between users and do the same type of recommendations that Netflix does when Netflix recommends movies to you. But that's not what this project's about. This project is about doing cool stuff with Leap Motion. So this week we moved one step closer to being able to start integrating the Leap Motion into the project, which you'll start seeing in Milestones 3 and 4 coming up in the next 2 weeks. But in this milestone, we went ahead and did some AJAX requests to our database, and we're actually able to pull data about these nodes. Because the end result is we want a graph that is navigable via Leap Motion, but also provides valuable information about the node, so you can actually learn stuff about the data that we're looking at. And so what I've done is I've randomized the names associated with student records so that none of these student records are exposing protected student data. So the student data that you're seeing does not actually correlate to the data behind the entry does not actually correlate to the student that the name is. That's all been randomized for privacy. So without the Leap Motion, the UI paradigm is to double-click on a node to get information. So we can go ahead and double-click on this professor node, and we can see this. This was an AJAX request that was made. We can see the name of the node, and then we can see the properties that we're storing in our Postgres database. So we have the first name of this professor, the last name, and then a couple metadata params that we store for the application. But you can also click on something like a student, and you'll see that we load all the different properties that we're keeping on the students. We know if they're a sophomore, what term they're enrolled in, what their major is, etc. And then lots of metadata that we store in the application. We can also click on courses. So here's a course node. So this is corporate finance. We can see the call number of it. We can see the ID as it's stored in our graph database, etc. We can see kind of the remote ID that the University Information System uses to store this data. So a couple cool things are going on here. One, this is a custom-built modal that I'm working on for a UI kit that I'm putting together. So got to play around with using that in a real use case. And then all this data is being pulled via AJAX, so it hits the server, it hits one of these, the variety of controllers in the Rails app, whether it be the user's controller or the topics controller or the courses controller, depending on what type of object you request. It actually dynamically generates that route from the node, from the metadata stored on the node, and then it builds this table based upon the jQuery, the JSON object that's returned. So we have some dynamic table building to get this display. So lots of cool kind of JavaScript and Ruby meta programming going on behind the scenes to make this all work. But the result is this pretty complex graph that we can navigate and learn about each of the nodes. So you can see I can double-click on each of these nodes, and they each provide me different data. So a really cool way to look at your data and then also get the kind of property data stored behind these nodes. History of the US since 1865. Looks like a fascinating class. So stay tuned. Next week, we're going to hook up Leap Motion and navigate this graph data via Leap Motion. So that's going to be really exciting. Won't have to click with the mouse anymore. Instead, we'll have a cursor with the Leap Motion. And then in week 4, we're going to explore other graphs and have the Leap Motion gesture switch between different types of graphs. So right now, this is what we're calling the academic graph, because you can see enrollment and other students enrolled in the course, but there's also things like the interest graph that we'll build, and finally the third one that we'll look at in week 4 is the social graph. So stay tuned for more exciting graph stuff. Thanks for your time. Bye.